To me, hope requires three things. First, it requires a connection to reality, to the truth. We have to, if we're in a situation of despair or worry or anger or hurt or whatever it is, we need to be honest about what's going on. We cannot just be like an ostrich and dig our head in the sand. In this, I always think about the figure from the Second Iraq War, Baghdad Bob, who would always get up and say, everything you are seeing on TV is not happening. We are having a great victory for our leader. Like, no. He was completely untethered to reality. If hope is going to be real, we need to be real about the situation that we're in. And part of that reality may be that there's some unforeseen thing that could happen. Miracles happen. We don't know what the outcome it is, but we have to be realistic about the situation as we see it and as it is. The second thing is we need a connection to each other. Hope. We are not creatures that can sustain hope in isolation for long. In this, I always think about Tom Hanks's movie Castaway, where he's alone, stranded on an island. And for a while, he does it. He's got the sign going on the beach. He's starting a fire up on the mountain. But then, 45 minutes into the movie, he's talking to a volleyball. He lost the narrative, right? He lost it. And it's because he was alone for so long. We need each other. And part of this is because I think when I'm in despair, I need you to lift me up. And when you're in despair, you need me to lift you up. Like we do it for each other. We are each other's crutch and support. And even if we are physically alone, just to remind ourselves that we're not alone is helpful. The third thing is we need a connection to a larger story. And there's lots of stories here. There are the stories that our nation has a larger narrative, a larger story. Families oftentimes have our, canon of stories that we tell each other that make us laugh and make us cry. As people of faith, we have a larger story, a larger narrative that we put ourselves in. As people of faith, our story is the story we find in the scriptures. And the story from the beginning of the Bible to the end of the Bible isn't a series of glorious victories, one after the other. It's a series of defeats and losses and deaths, one after another. It's just that each defeat, each death, each loss isn't the end of the story. It's not the last chapter. After each one of those, God raises us up again. And so when there's a flood, there is the rebursting of life all over the globe. When we are slaves in Egypt, we are freed and brought into a promised land. When Jesus is laid into the tomb, on the third day, he walks out of that tomb. And so as people of faith, people of the Christian faith, we can put our story in context of the larger story and realize that no matter what it is that we are going through right now, as terrible as it is, as heartbreaking as it is, that we know it's not the last chapter. So hope as the nexus of connection to the truth, connection to each other, and connection to a larger story. I see that in today's Old Testament lesson from Isaiah chapter 40. The first 39 chapters of Isaiah is a unit. It's sometimes called First Isaiah. And it's doom and gloom. And it's leading up to Israel being utterly destroyed, many people killed, Jerusalem destroyed, the survivors taken off as captive slaves to Babylon. And by the 39th chapter, it's all happened, and Israel is just this broken husk of a nation. Which then starts Isaiah 40, which begins with this trumpet blast of hope. Isaiah 40 begins, "Comfort ye, O comfort ye my people." And then in today's lesson, Isaiah asks the people, "Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth?" All rhetorical questions. He's saying, of course you know the story. And you know that we're part of this larger thing. And because we're part of this larger thing, even though we are utterly defeated today, we know this is not our last chapter, because it's never our last chapter, and it's never going to be our last chapter. And so what Isaiah is doing is he's connecting these broken people wallowing in despair with their larger story. And because it's a collective story, he's connecting them with each other and saying that we are all in this together, we have all fallen together, and we are all going to rise together. We also see it in our gospel lesson today from the first chapter of Mark, where we see Jesus's first healing story. Jesus's ministry was teaching, healing, and casting out evil. And in this lesson from the first chapter, we see him eventually go out and heal the masses. He heals like an entire town, then he goes off to other towns. But before he goes off and does the masses, he walks into one person's home. It happens to be the home of Peter's mother-in-law. And she is sick with a fever. And today we are like, oh, she's a fever, take some aspirin and you'll be better in the morning. Well, no, they didn't have aspirin. They didn't have anything that looked like modern medicine. If it was a fever from an infection, they didn't have antibiotics. A fever could spell the end. Jesus walks into this woman's home. He takes her by the hand and he lifts her up and he heals her. And so before he heals the masses, he walks into one home and brings hope to one person. And I think that's really important because it shows that his ministry isn't just to everyone, but it's to you and to me and the person sitting next to you and the person who lives across the street from you. Jesus' ministry is not impersonal. It is thoroughly personal. Jesus brings hope to you. He connects you and me and everyone you know with this larger story, and he brings us together. As Christians, I think it's kind of obvious that we are meant to be people of hope. And that we are to be people who recognize and look for hope, even in our lowest moments. And this is not one of those pull yourself up by your bootstraps things that sometimes we can do it ourselves and sometimes we need each other to remind each other, hey, it's okay. Sometimes I need you to remind me that there is hope, that there is a tomorrow, and that somehow, some way we will rise again. And sometimes you need me to say that to you. We do this together. We do this in community. So we are called to be people of hope. But I don't think it ends there. We are also called, I believe, to be ambassadors of hope, agents of hope. We're to be evangelical about our hope, to bring hope to people who are having a hard time finding it. And that means being agents of truth, being agents of connection, and being agents of telling the larger story, the larger narrative. And some people are going to hear this and be like, all right, I got to go to Africa and do this. I got to go to Southeast Asia and do this. I got to go to the inner city ghetto and be an agent of hope there. In this place of darkness, I'm going to bring light. And people for the last 2,000 years have heard this call and have been inspired to go to heroic places and have heroic ministries. And that's amazing. And again, I'm drawn back to the gospel lesson where Jesus, when he brings hope and healing for the first time, he doesn't go to the temple. He doesn't go to a shrine. He doesn't go to an altar. He doesn't go to the place where there's a bunch of Bible scholars studying, poring over the scriptures. He doesn't go to the inner city ghetto. He doesn't go to an orphanage. He just goes to a woman's home. This faith begins at home. Yeah, we could be agents of hope in other corners of the world, but we can also start in our home, in our neighborhood, in our family, in our community, in our place of work, in our group of friends. And then that then expands out into friends we haven't met yet and strangers who we never will, to be little beacons of hope, always connecting people to each other and to the larger story and to truth. I think this is our call. And I think every age of human history could probably have said, and no age needs it more than this one. But I really kind of think we're at a time, at least in our own history, where the world might not ever have needed this more than right now. The world needs hope. And because of that, this is our time. And so my challenge to you today, this week, is to find people that you know right around you. I doubt you'll have to look all that hard or all that long. People who need a little shard of hope, and to give them that little bit of connection that they need. And it might mean a cup of coffee with them. It might mean a phone call or a text message, or whatever it is, to just help them know that they are not alone, and there is something larger that we are a part of. And that something larger that we are a part of is life in Jesus together. Amen.